Hello and welcome to the Young Eager Writers podcast. Today we have Shannon Burke, co-creator and writer of the Netflix hit Outer Banks and the author of the critically acclaimed novels Safe Flight, Into the Savage Country, Black Flies, which was a New York Times notable book, and the forthcoming novel, The Brother Years. Shannon, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today and to speak out to our young, eager listeners.
Glad to be here.
I'm very glad you're here too, and I imagine a lot of our listeners probably will have already watched Outer Banks for this, just because I feel like everyone's watched it. At least everyone I know has watched it. But if not, that's definitely a show that people are probably gonna be interested in after this. But if you guys didn't know, Shannon Burke writes not just screenplays and isn't just the creator of really awesome movies. He creates novels too, and I think they're really good. So I actually wanted to start off talking about your books. 3 of your novels have been published by Random House. I want to know, what was the process of publication like, and do you have any tips for young writers who dream of getting their work published by one of the big 5 companies?
Well, I mean, my experience. I mean, just write. Like, my advice is just to keep writing. When the book is ready, it will probably work out. As in, people will recognize it. Maybe not right away. For me, it was so slow. Like, I swear, I had the worst. I wanted to be a writer. I had no support and no reason to think I should be able to be a writer. I was an English major in college. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I decided to be a writer, and for 12 years, I sat in a room by myself and wrote for like 6 hours a day or 7 hours a day. Nobody wanted to publish what I wrote. Nobody cared. And just bit by bit, really slowly, like, I started to get a little better. I probably wrote like 5 novels. I think it was 5 or 6. Like, a lot of novels I just shelved. Yeah. They were terrible. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. But and there's long times in the middle there where it just seemed insane. I took jobs, like I became a paramedic, but before that I just had any jobs, like selling t-shirts on the street or working in restaurants or in bookstores. And I would write during the day, work at night. And like, writing was like my real job for years, like, as in my real job that I didn't get paid for, and that nobody would read anything I wrote. And then I wrote Safe Flight, and I thought, you know what, I did it. Is it not the first draft, but the third draft, something happened, and I knew I had it. I'm like, I got it. And but literally, I started writing like all the time I was 20, and I'm like 32 at this point. Like, it's been going on for a long time, and so I wasn't sure, but I sent it in. I got an agent, and it was sent out, and the editor from Doubleday wanted to buy it. And first he said he was going to buy it, and then he didn't. He said that the marketing department wouldn't let him. And I had been disappointed so many times. I just expected something like that was going to happen. Yeah. And then by that point, I had started working on, people had read my fiction, unpublished fiction. I had started being dragged over into the movie side, almost inadvertently. But I was working on I was working for Steve Gaghan, who like directed Syriana and wrote Traffic. I worked on most of the things. I worked on with him and for him initially, and then with him for like about 15 years, off and on. And I think we were working on The Alamo. There was a movie that they didn't end up using our script. They ended up making the movie. It was a Ron Howard movie, like a remake of The Alamo. But anyway, I was in LA, and I got a call at like 6 a.m. And it was from my agent. He's like, "Did you see the New York Times today?" I'm like, "No, it's 6 a.m. I'm in LA." And he was like, "Well, you're on it. You're on the front page." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And
that's awesome.
The editor-in-chief of Random House, which is the biggest job in publishing, is the world's biggest publishing company. They had fired their editor-in-chief, and there was a 7-week. They were trying to find who the editor was going to be for 7 weeks, and it was this big thing. It was the biggest thing in publishing in years, and so it was like on the cover of the paper every day. And so finally they picked this guy, Dan Menaker, who was the guy who tried to buy my book like 7 weeks before. And he announces in the paper, yeah, I'm taking the job, and the first thing I'm doing is buying Shannon Burke's first novel.
Oh my God, that's
Oh
amazing.
my, oh my God, it was like the best moment of my life, like where I had been trying so hard for so long, and then like to have it happen that way, like it was like the best feeling. So,
That's
um,
unbelievable.
yeah,
How did you, I
there
mean,
have been a
clearly
few
you're a
moments like,
fantastic writer and you've practiced a lot, but how did you manage to, I mean, a lot of people, and especially a lot of people listening to this, they've definitely, if they started writing 12 years ago to get to that point, they would have been 3 years old writing novels.
oh
So,
right, I
a
know.
lot of the people listening to this haven't been at it for that long, but how did you keep at it for that long when you didn't necessarily have any tangible result in front of you?
I have no idea. I don't know, like insanity. There's no, I can't explain it. I just decided I wanted to be a writer. It was what I wanted to do. And most of that time, it just seemed impossible. Like, I only took one writing class. I was really shy. I didn't like it. Like, I felt like I wanted to be a great writer. And I wasn't even the best writer, like in my row in the class, like it was dispiriting. Like, you want to be really good, and you sort of, if you take a unbiased assessment of your skills at that point, like you're just not that good. All you have is desire. But I'm just talking about myself.
Yeah.
I felt like I had nothing else, and so it was hard like that. It was just, like I said, it was discouraging. But I had some crazy desire that that's what I wanted to do. So you just keep doing it, and just by doing it, like what you really learn is like you end up imitating. You just imitate who you like. It's normal. It's just what everybody does. But there's some things like I can't write like Faulkner. Like I can't write in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and you learn that you can't do it. Like that's not what you do, but you do this other thing, and you learn the tools that you have. And so then when you come to a problem, like you want to tell a story, you know what you have in your tool bag. Like, oh, I can tell it this way because this is what I can do. So you get really comfortable with what you can do as a writer, and then that sort of frees you up just to think of, well, what's the story I want to tell? Like, how do I tell this with what I have? And you get comfortable with it, and it starts getting like the reader can feel that comfort in the way you write, like just that, I'm not trying to show off or anything. I'm just trying to tell my story, and this is the story I'm trying to tell, and you're trying to get it, and the same time, bit by bit, you're getting at something inside yourself that you probably don't even know is there. Like, um, I it's something, it's like meditation or something. It's something that you get at after a really long period of time, and you tap into that as you start to write, and it's sort of like the core of your being. And again, I don't know if there's any other way to get at it except by just keep trying, and slowly it comes out.
I love that. That's amazing, amazing advice. And I really give you credit for staying at it for that long. And I'm really happy you did, because a lot of people are very happy that you've created the stories you've created. And I actually wanted to talk about an enduring quality in your work, which is extremely relatable characters who have dealt with tremendous loss and oftentimes come from the wrong side of the tracks. And I think if anyone's watched Outer Banks, John B would fit that bill, but also Frank Verbeek, I hope I said his last name right.
Yeah, yeah.
I've only read the book, so I'm thinking, how would it be pronounced? But um, I wanted to know, how do you architect characters that seem to connect with people from all walks of life and have both readers and viewers alike rooting for them like a best friend?
Oh man, that's a tough question. That's a good question. I mean, like the I grew up like I grew up in a poor kid in a rich neighborhood. So like all that stuff, like the social, the class stuff, is so akin to like my own upbringing. Like where um, I went to the school New Trier. It's a really good high school. It's in suburban Chicago. But like my dad, when we had, like, there was four of us. There was four kids in the family. We all slept in the same room. My dad was like, for some of the time when I was growing up, like he was working as a janitor, and we were working like in the places where I would work with my father, like in the places where like the kids from school, where their parents worked. And it was just, you just saw both sides. You would see both sides of the of the world, and there really is a class divide, and so it's just so much a core of my own experience that goes in. Now, making the people relatable, so there was one thing in Safe Flight that was that I realized, and Black Flies as well. I realized it from Zola. We actually talk about it on Outer Banks all the time. We call it the Zola principle, in that if bad enough things happen to your characters, they can do bad things back, really bad things, and you'll still root for them, because like you just forgive them everything because the circumstances are so terrible.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that, but like trying to, I think it's a sort of secret mix, like an alchemy, like trying to make them, you make them human. I just think you make them human, but they can do, you can have characters do really bad things and you'll still root for them, as long as like, I guess as long as you understand them. I don't know if that answers your question. Perfect. I think it's almost an unanswerable question. It's a trick, but
it's a tough one to answer. No, you did a great job. I mean, that's, I think, advice that everyone should take to heart. Just creating relatable, understandable characters, and it's sometimes tough to do that, but you do it really, really good, and you do it good across mediums, which is something that we should note. I mean, screenwriting is definitely different, especially for television, and creating a story meant for especially modern television versus novel writing. So in your eyes, what are the major differences between creating stories for these mediums, and which do you enjoy more?
Well, the difference is there's not that much there's basically not that much difference in the story. Like the length of a novel and the length of a season of TV is pretty similar. Like the mental length, like the events that happen in a novel and the events that would happen in a season are, they're about similar. Like, and a lot of the stuff that it's really just the last bit that's different in sort of how you execute it. Now, having said that, like you tell different stories. Like it happens without even thinking about it really. But if you're writing for TV, it's such a popular medium. You can't. You want it to be more related. You want it to be relatable. You can't. It can't be as personal, I guess. Or else it has not been in the stuff that I have done. Like the books are really personal. Like the Brother Years that is coming out is. I mean, I guess all of them are like, if you end up reading the Brothers, you'll totally understand like who like someone could read, instead of me talking to someone, I just say, if you read that book, you'll understand exactly who I am, because it's so personal. It's a little more deferred or indirect in the TV stuff, where there's bits and pieces of all of us, but particularly Josh and I, who don't do most of the writing in the characters, but it's not really our story, like the story of our life in the way that it can be in fiction. So that part is different. And with fiction, a lot of times you're checking really deep down inside yourself, like, is this true? Is this true? Like, did this happen? But is this emotionally true? Like, your experience.
I love that. Yeah, that's what I've never thought of it that way. That's really, really interesting. But it's good to know that the storytelling principles are at least pretty close across mediums. That should make a lot of people feel good who've never had the courage to even try writing anything like a screenplay, anything like that. It's definitely an intimidating thing. But I actually, in the screenplay of Outer Banks specifically, there's I would say you're a master of suspense. Very, very suspenseful. You and the other co-creators of the show, it was unbelievable. And I wanted to know, how did you manage to create a story with so much suspense and intrigue that people literally could not stop watching?
So I mean, that was definitely something we tried to do. We tried to engineer it. We wanted to have a cliffhanger at the end of every episode. There had been a lot of talk about like the mid-season slump on the Netflix shows, and we were really determined not to do that. And so we just decided always. Oh, and there's this other thing. So we tried right before we started, sort of mid-season. So I'm friends with Steve Gagan, the guy who, I don't know if you know Traffic, but Syriana. Like we met when we decided to be writers at the same time when we were 20 years old. Like literally, we both said, like, let's be 20, let's be writers. We were kids, we both ended up becoming writers. But he had just done this. He was directing another movie, but he had been a producer of this Netflix show called Chambers, and he was talking about some of the lessons, like sort of that he had learned, and he's like, you're going to have a hard time doing quality control on all these different directors and all the who would come in. He said, but the one thing that always works is plot. He said try to put in as much plot as possible, because like that, you can't mess that up. Like that will translate no matter, no matter who shoots it or if someone's having a bad day. And so we heard that at, like sort of at the exact right time. And so we were thinking maybe they would find the Royal Merchant, I don't know, in episode 6, and it happens in 3 in the, the 3rd episode. They find the gold in the 6th episode, like your spoiler alert, I guess, the people. But so, we just moved up the plot and we just kept generating more plot. Like, let's, where does this story go? And it actually, like, the best parts of the season were the things we hadn't planned on, like that sort of just were generated by what we had, by the momentum of the story as we went along. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
no, it totally does. It was unbelievable, because most mysteries will have, like, it's really a mystery thriller series. They'll have the 3 big reveals, and the 3rd reveal happened basically halfway through the season, and the rest of it is just this adrenaline thrill ride that I know me. I usually only watch an hour or 2 hours TV at a time. I was in for the rest of it past episode 6, and it was great. So that's really, really interesting to know. And I guess, obviously, I'm not the only one who's had that similar reaction of just, wow, this was really awesome. Millions of people have loved it and watched it, and that's not hyperbole. And I want to know, what has it been like for your work to connect with so many people? And has the audience response influenced your approach to writing future works in that world? I guess I could say season 2, because fingers crossed that's 100% happening.
I don't know if it's changed really that much. I've been writing for so long, like it's just I have my my process, and just I don't really pay that much attention to what is going on most of the time. Like, as in, I just, most of the time just writing and trying to think of the story, and we could totally fail or do the wrong thing, but it won't be because we're, sort of like taking our eye off the ball or something. Like, we're just, I don't think it's changing the process. The process actually, I thought, worked really well. Like, it was like I said, it was Jonas directing or sort of interacting with the other directors. These are the 3 of us, were Josh and Jonas and me, and Josh and I were writing scripts, and there were some other staff, but it was really like Josh and I sort of driving the boat, and it's I don't know, that's our process. Like, it worked well, and I don't know if we're going to do anything differently in process, though we definitely learned things. Like, we learned what worked and what didn't work. Like, you see the responses, it's good to look at them and see like what hit home, what didn't. So there's definitely a few things we're doing, so we're writing the 2nd season. We were hired to write the 2nd season. It's hard to write half the season. We don't have a 2nd season, but we'll be writing the scripts, and I feel pretty good about it. But and so we're somewhere like we're in the 4th script right now, and there's some things we're doing differently because, I don't know, people wanted to see it, or people kept talking about it, or it's similar to something that we saw that worked, and thought, oh, this is the sort of story that works. So I guess it's just like any feedback. Like, I'm definitely the kind of writer that reads all the reviews, I like to see what other people think. It's sometimes painful, but it's good. I think it's good if you can do it without getting damaged. Like, if you read it without like getting sort of like gun shy, then it's good, because it's feedback. Like, you hear what people like and what they don't. So.
Well, that's so cool. And you've managed to have feedback from literally a nation's worth of people with how many.
It's that aspect of it. It's sort of mind blowing. I mean, none of us have ever been involved in anything where there was this sort of response. It's a little surreal. I mean, like, it was the TikToks that I actually didn't even know what TikTok was. And I think it was after like 28 or 29 days, there were 1 billion views, and we're like,
oh my God. Wow.
Like, now it's like 1.3, maybe 1.2, whatever it is. It's so many. Like, it's hard to put into. It's hard to put that number into context.
Yeah.
I know. I was talking to my mother on the phone, and I said, in the 2 minutes we've been talking on this call, more people have watched an Outer Banks TikTok than will ever read all my books combined.
Well, never know. I mean,
you never know. But you know what I'm saying.
Really big.
a billion. I mean, it's like the number is so huge that
Yeah. Yeah, Harry Potter's only ever sold 450 million combined for the whole series, which
yeah,
is a lot, but
obviously it's a
actually,
gigantic number.
yeah, it's unbelievable. And I actually talking, I mean, obviously Outer Banks was a massive, massive success, but you've been around and involved in the film industry for quite a while, I believe well over a decade now, right?
Yeah. So I've a lot of the time early on, like for at least 10 years, I I was working as a paramedic in New York City. Like I was like writing during the day, and I was working as a paramedic at night, and I did that for 5 years for the city. It was and Steve Gagan, you know, the guy who wrote Traffic and wrote I directed Syriana, and, among other things, and he read a draft of Safe Flight. He read that draft that I said. He's like, nah, this is going to be published. He's like, don't worry about it. He goes, I need help in the script. He's like, quit your job, come out to Hollywood. If the movie gets made, I'll make you a producer. And it was this Katie Holmes movie, Benjamin Bratt, Katie Holmes movie called Abandoned. You know, we worked really hard, and I'm not even sure we didn't make the movie worse because we like tried to make like a teen slasher or something into a drama. But but it did happen. Like the movie got made, and
Awesome.
yeah, so that was good. I quit my job. I went out there, and since then I had lots of jobs. Most of them like sort of under the table or things that didn't get made. But I didn't have another job. I had, you know, I would write my books, and I would work on various TV shows, you know, various screenplays or scripts. Yeah. So since 2000, 2001, something like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's really, really awesome. Do you have any tips for a lot of times the process of breaking into like the book industry? You know, you get an agent and all that's hard, really hard, but at least there's a kind of a process there that at least young writers have some knowledge of. In terms of breaking into the film industry, where would you, as a writer, where would you go? Where would you start to try and do that?
You know, it's weird because everyone always asks that question, and it's sort of simpler um, with on the literary end, on the book end, it's you get an agent. I mean, that's all. That's basically you have one step. It's get an agent,
Yeah,
and then um, they do everything else. I mean, it's not like it doesn't make your book good or anything, but it will. That's the only thing you can do is just get an agent, and you give your book to the agent. Now, on the movie side, it's more complicated. I don't. I don't have the answer, and I don't have the answer for anybody. Like whenever you talk to someone, it's always some different way. For me, I got pulled in, and I got every job I got, which is maybe I don't know, like 10 or 15. However, I don't. It's a lot of, you know, they all came from fiction. It's every single one was someone had read my books and said, I think you'd be a good screenwriter.
that's
Like
awesome.
that's it all. I mean, if all, I wrote you know, I write fiction because that's what I like to do, and it's a personal thing, and I want to do it. But it was the calling card. Whenever anyone wanted to know who I was, they just had those books. So, like, say if you're writing plays or something, like it's not a terrible thing. There's so many playwrights. Um, like there's lots. I know when I was doing Outer Banks, they were asked, you know, the producers who were the producers also on Stranger Things, like the ones who found Stranger Things, and they would say like, "What are you watching?" I remember I was watching Mindhunter. I'm like, God, that show's so well written. I love it. And they said every single writer on that show is a playwright. Like they just got all playwrights, and so it's really common. So
Yeah.
lots of people, which you can understand because like you know, they're almost the same, not exactly the same thing, but not so far away from each other either. So lots of journalists, and then just people from anything that gives you experience with the world is good. Um, but so this is not telling you how to break in. I know that was the question. I don't have a good answer. I go out there, meet people, but so I didn't go out there and I hate it. It's so there's so many people trying to break in that I think it's dispiriting. It's discouraging. You feel like what you thought was special about yourself, everybody else has that too, and there's something deadening about it. And so if it's too deadening, try to do it some other way. But I don't have. I know it's not going to work if you don't keep writing.
That's amazing advice. And keep writing is what you did, what you've done, and it's gotten you places that are very, very impressive, just to say the least. Right here, we'll wrap this episode up. amazing job. And thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on. The listeners are probably going to be so happy that you're here. I did, before we go, I want to give you a chance to just mention where people can find you online and all these links to his website, to the trailer for Outer Banks, and also his upcoming novel, The Brother Years, which the description sounds awesome, will be in the show notes below. But if you'd like to share, you can do so now.
It's Shannon Burke. I'm sure you can find me online. There's a link from practically everything to my website, which is Shannon Burke website. But and you just type in Outer Banks, you'd probably find me. So.
Yeah, that's it. ShannonBurkeWebsite.com.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah, I'm obviously not a great self promoter. I never really mastered that part.
No, you're good. And actually, I'll say that I think everyone, because a lot of people probably have heard of Outer Banks, like me. I was like looking up, seeing who's the writer of this. It was unbelievable. I found Shannon Burke. Definitely, if you haven't had a chance to check out his books yet, I read Into the Savage Country and Black Flies. Great, really great novels, and you can see how he grew into this writing Outer Banks. It's very, the characters, I saw some similarities and I was like, this is awesome. So if anyone wants to go check those books out, I'd highly recommend it. Really, yeah, awesome books. And I think that at the end of the day, just take his advice of keep writing, and worked out really well for him. And we're really, really thankful to have him on today. So once again, I hope everyone has an amazing rest of your day, and happy writing.